Ready to roll? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's call to order today's meeting of the Plastic Reduction Bylaw Task Force, your Wednesday, June 4th. I'm not? Okay, 2025. We're here at the Yarmouth Police Station. So my name is Jamie Vieira. I'm the chair of this task force. I'd like to begin with just some introductions and welcome. So if we go around the table, we'll start with my right there.
I'm Pete Malpass. I'm representing Community and Economic Development.
Okay.
Can we please use the mics? Sorry.
Yep. Maybe there's one here.
Oh, yeah, there's one.
Get it done.
Barry Lewis, Assistant Health Director, Town of Yarmouth.
Aiden Delaney, Skipper Chatterhouse.
Mike Davis, Bagels and Beyond.
Jay Gardner, I'm the Director of Health and Environment for Barnstable County.
Haley O'Neill. I'm the Program Manager for Care for the Cape and Islands and the petitioner for this article.
Mark Forrest, Yarmouth Board of Selectmen.
Jill Talladay, founder and board member of Care for the Cape and Islands and a longtime former Recycling and Solid Waste Committee member.
Mary Vilbon, President of the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce. Mary Craig, Vice Chair of Yarmouth Board of Health.
Good afternoon, I'm Bill Glass, Chair of the Recycling and Solid Waste Advisory Committee here in Yarmouth.
All right, thank you everyone for coming here. Just give you a little, talk about what we've got in front of us here. So we have our agenda. I just want to point out that attached to the agenda is minutes from the last meeting, but we neglected to put approval of the minutes on the agenda, so we're going to carry that forward to the next meeting, and we'll adopt the minutes of the May 12th in this meeting at the next one. You'll also then have attached what is the older version of the Falmouth plastics bylaw, and you have a handout now which is the recently adopted Falmouth rules and regulations for the establishment of plastics. So when we're talking about the Falmouth regulation, and we do, the one that is now standalone by itself, effective date September 1, 2025, and adopted April 28, 2025 is the one that we would be using because that's the one that was adopted. And then further on, when we get to a definition of plastics, you have a handout that was provided to us of the 7 different plastics and examples with some definitions and some very, very helpful examples that are there. So that's what everyone has in front of them, just as an understanding we've got there. I'd like to begin with the first item on the committee roll. Those of you who recall, we had a discussion of just what it is that we were tasked to do. Were we somehow constrained for purposes of the bylaw and the regulation that was there to work within the confines that was there? Did we have the discretion to go outside that and propose something new? And we rightfully sought some guidance from the select board, and I believe that we received that last evening. And to kind of paraphrase that, I think the fair characterization was the task force can dictate the direction that it chooses to go in. Meaning, if we feel collectively that the best way to proceed here is to utilize what we've got and tinker with it, we can do that. Or if we want to adopt something that is entirely different within the same context and vein and intention and all that stuff, we have the right to do that as well. The format that we choose, we can recommend to the select board that it be something that they use as a proposed health regulation. And it can also be something that we propose that they use as just a town meeting warrant article regulation as well. So I guess the discretion of how we want to do this is entirely up to us at this point, as I understand the charge from the meeting last evening. And so we have a short window of time. I think we were kind of informed last night that there is a fall town meeting in November. The hope was that we would wrap up by September of 2025. So we've got our work cut out for us in terms of timing. And so, is anyone else who may have seen the meeting or have any other comments on what they may have understood the role to be based on last night's meeting? Mary?
Jamie, I just want to say that the charge that was
Oh, yeah.
handed out to the select board is in your packet. So if you have any questions, please follow the minutes of last month's meeting.
And I think you can see, thank you, Mary, for that. In the third paragraph down from that, it pretty much spells out what I've just indicated there, that we have the latitude to, as we see fit, collectively, to put together for a recommendation to the select board, how to proceed there. I'll take a minute for anyone who has any questions, taking a look at it. But otherwise, does anyone else have any comments or anything from what they may have understood from last night, or any thoughts or comments about that at all?
So this charge, when was this put together?
My understanding was it was put together between when we met last and last evening by the town administrator. It was on the packet of the select board last evening. So they had that in front of them when voting and deciding to provide us the direction that we asked for. All right, seeing none. You'll recall at the last meeting, we had the discussion about there are 7 different types of plastics. And, okay, so maybe it would be helpful as we're charged with coming up with something that's going to address how to reduce and eliminate and address the issue of plastics that balances the environment and our business community, that it would be helpful to get an understanding of just what does it mean to have a plastic that's number 1 through number 7. If we're gonna try to regulate it, maybe we ought to know what it is that we're talking about, because we're gonna be dealing with some that I imagine are far greater in number for some businesses than others. And that may be helpful in us deciding that some things we may wanna go very far in one regard to say no, never, and other ones we may wanna be more flexible, but it's much better to understand what it is before we try to regulate it. And I hope that that's clear. So I know we did ask the folks from Stop and Shop who were here the last time, if, and in addition to the 7 different examples that we've got, if perhaps they could assist us and come forward, if they wouldn't mind, with maybe just giving us a quick overview of what is a plastic 1 through 7. And you'll need a microphone.
The question is, can you hear us?
Yeah, but it might be better with a microphone so the folks at home can hear us and hear you more importantly.
There you go.
Oh.
Hello all, this is the first time I'm doing this there, so it's good to meet you all, thank you. Some of you saw me here last night. What we did is we went through the store based upon our information and tried to categorize everything there 1 through 7, like you guys, everyone was meeting their task forces asked for. The first one is the PETs, and forgive me there, I have a hard time there pronouncing, they're all plastics, so I'll just leave it at that. So number 1 is PET. So for us, these are the PETs that you'll see. So I'm saying, this is a bakery container that you can physically see the product in. You can select it as a customer, all right? And basically, they're almost tamper-proof, where you can't just go into it there and touch it. Same thing there with this one. This one here serves as a salad or a cut fruit container for various other, for various departments. Let me give a little bit more. So this one here, again, they're tamper-proof. Once you fill it, all right? You have to break the seal in order there to touch or consume the product, all right? If you, as a consumer, see this, that this has been tampered with, we're definitely not gonna wanna buy it, all right? So, again, deli salads, this one here is, again, is another bakery, this one here, I believe, is a cannoli clamshell. Again, they're in the bake shop, you want to see what you're buying. And that's part of what you're looking at as far as this plastic goes. There's two different.
I know exactly what it's like.
So again, this one here is a deli platter. Again, you're servicing their different parties. You want these containers, so you can see it there. You serve without these. I don't know how I would be able there to serve a party, a gathering, you name it, whatever service. Again, this one here is another salad container, cut fruit thing.
As far as alternatives are concerned, there's extremely limited alternatives to this particular plastic.
And just so that I understand, all of these items fit the definition of number one.
Yes.
Correct.
Those are all number one.
All number one.
Now, this is just a small sampling of the number one.
Right.
This isn't the full number one, but this is just a few. I mean, if we wanted to bring everything, we would rent a U-Haul.
We do a field trip at the store.
Right.
And the other thing is,
Another one.
just a little piece of information that I just found out by putting this all together. In the recycle emblem on each plastic is the number that corresponds to what kind of plastic it is. So with the number 3, right in the emblem with the recyclable, there'll be a number 3 there.
Basically, right on the top of your coffee cup, there's a number one right there. Number 2. So
This is number 2, high density I can't say that.
polyethylene. So the polyethylenes there are your bread bags, all right? So this is, here, we'll show and tell you guys they can hold it.
Preferably.
So is that a bread bag for a bakery?
Yeah.
For bakery.
Bakery, yeah.
This one here is another bread bag there for your bakery. This one is your produce bags. This would also include your wheat bags. If you've ever been to the produce department, you're basically there, you're putting your fruit, you're separating your grapes, X, Y, and Z, into these bags there so that they're not touching or contaminating their other product. And again, another one. So a lot of these, so again, when you're in the bake shop, you have your bread, the bread there comes in there, it's packaged, it goes out on the shelf, all right? So you want it in a container so that it is not being cross-contaminated with something else.
Minimizing any hand contact. That's what we're trying to do.
And to the number 2, there are no alternatives available.
What's the difference between this and cellophane, for example? Or is it?
Cellophane is, I believe, is number 4.
Yeah, there's a few.
That's coming.
It's coming.
So can I ask
Go
you,
ahead.
Jamie, is it okay?
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
Please.
So what is the difference of that as a number 2 and Wonder Bread plastic?
I'd have to look at the Wonder Bread plastic. It might be exactly the same thing.
I believe Wonder Bread might fall under number 3 or 4.
So you wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to sell a loaf of bread?
Well, no, because that's not store produced.
Because it's pre-packaged.
Right, but if we're anything that we're producing and we're packaging up, that's where the ban would fall. Now, it's a good point though, Mary, because if you take a look at our store, and if you made a list, if you walk down every one of our 20-something or so aisles, 23 aisles, and checked off what's 1, what's 2, what's 1 through 7, you would be amazed, or I would say appalled, at the sheer number of items that we would not be able to sell.
If this encompassed all plastics, and not just ready-to-eats or
Everything.
single serve.
Right.
So,
Milk jugs, detergent jugs, you name it, so.
yogurt, basically, a lot of the dairy would disappear.
Right.
Yeah, you want to do number 3? I'll do number 3.
I'll talk about the alternatives.
All right, so number 3 is PVC polyvinyl chloride. For this, the overwrap, hold up. The overwrap there, as you've seen this there in many of your stores, in many of the stores all over. That's your meat department items there. That's your produce items. So this plastic, this part of the container there comes further on, the black tray.
Yes.
Yep. So we would be.
Limited alternatives.
Say again?
Limited alternatives.
For the wrap?
For the wrap.
For the
wrap.
For the plastic wrap, or
Plastic
the overwrap.
wrap over.
So, black tray there is another section. 4. Number 4 is your low-density polyethylene, your deli bags. All right. So you come to the deli, this is the bag there that you're going to receive your deli in. So you, again, this is, you want this, you want your deli meat to be served in this. It keeps everything there safe, foodborne illness, etc. Again, Joe can actually talk a little bit about this stuff. There's more, again, if you want to pass them around. Deli bags.
It's your typical Ziploc baggie, these. But, so our back bar, our deli back bar, we have opened meats and cheeses. With those open meat and cheeses, we put them in a bag that has an antimicrobial lining on the interior. It's gonna minimize any microbial growth. Is there an alternative for this? There is no alternative for that. There's no alternative for that. As a matter of fact, I think it was so in the past, we were using basically saran wrap, right? To wrap. To further our sense of sustainability, we decided, all right, enough of that, let's go to the bags. And then we found out that there are bags with the antimicrobial lining, which will certainly promote food safety issues. So again, no alternative with that.
More of the bread bags.
Can I ask a question? If you made the switch for that bag in the deli, so you opened up something, you then carved it, put it in the bag to dispense to the customer, and then you're gonna put it back on the shelf. Before you used to wrap it up with the plastic, right?
Yeah.
Can you reuse that bag each time? So you cut a turkey breast, and then you take the turkey that's left over, and you used to wrap it all up. Can you put it back in this bag till the next customer comes to cut down on the amount of?
Two different things. So
I'm sorry.
we have, no, it's fine. You don't know unless you work there. So we cut for the customer and it goes into the Ziploc bag.
Yep, I got that.
What we do with the leftovers goes into that bag to be stored for the next customer. You cannot reuse to another loaf because that could be cross-contamination.
Okay, so once you're done with the single, you open up a turkey breast, as an example. You carve up a pound to a customer, you put the rest of it goes back in this bag. Until that one's done, then you throw this one out.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right. But theoretically, this cuts down on the amount of plastic because it's not that long roll that you keep using
Yeah,
over and
because you
over.
keep wrapping it every single time you open it, you get one after the other. So you cut down on that saran wrap by using that bag.
Thank you.
This one here is your polyethylene PP. Bottom of your deli container. Chicken container. The top of your chicken container. Basically your hot items.
Yes. no alternatives. This is also for safety too, obviously hot foods can leak onto someone, causing a burn, or, you know, you put it in your car, God help you see, because you go to sit down.
So, put this over here, number 6.
I have a question. So what
Yeah.
did they use before those?
Before all this, before these bags, the
Microwave, saran wrap.
Like for the,
No, for the hot pot chickens.
For the chicken?
Yeah.
It was, I couldn't tell you what the number used to be, but it was very similar, probably a thinner plastic.
it's always been something.
It's always been a plastic, now it's a
Are you
plastic.
saying the bags?
So
Like
now,
that
so
plastic
yeah,
bag?
for our chickens, I was about to say that, chickens are now in a bag.
Yes.
It actually cuts down on this one here. I have a copy of it so that I can show everyone. 6. So this was the top of the hot bar item, so this one actually goes on top, all right? So number 6 is polystyrene, so number styrene, and so number 6 PS, all right, and bottom of your meat trays, rewraps, seafood. Meat seafood is exempt for EPS. No concern of other application if number 1, 5, or 7 is still accepted. So that would be all of these items here. Top of your lids. Single serves, silverware.
I don't have any information on alternatives.
Okay.
Finally, number 7.
Number 7.
So what do you use 6
Is
That-
use 6 for utensils.
Correct. Your single serve
Single
utensils.
serve utensils. Well,
Some of them there are your lid tops. What were the other items? This particular item there for your hot bar was, that, when I was looking at the top, key item number 6. And meat tray packaging. And number 7, the other polyester. All right, this one here is the new chicken bag that we use.
There's limited alternatives, often imported from Southeast Asia and China with limited domestic production.
So a lot of the stuff that you've seen there is based upon, a lot of it there is your food safety side. This stuff is important for many different reasons. That's why we've used it, it's been vetted. Right.
Yes, and I just wanted to give you an example of not having a viable alternative. So let's say this is a container used for cut fruit. There really is no other a viable alternative because you have to see what you're buying. It's got to be food safe, quality issues. So what is our alternative? The alternative is to source it out to a third party, right? So if we source it out to a third party, let me give you a quick example. So with our cut watermelon, right? The watermelon comes in, we wash it with a solution called Produce Max. That's been registered with the EPA. It's certified to be organic. It's kosher. It eliminates 99.9% of E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, you name it. We cut it, we wrap it, we label it, we make sure it's to temp before we put it out for display. We are confident, 100% confident that that cut watermelon is safe. Now, our other alternative is to source it out to a third party, where we have to totally rely on the third party. Now, again, from the QA perspective, we always jump to the worst case scenario, right? So anyone remember what happened to Boar's Head last summer, right? That is a worst case scenario. third-party vendor, now we're not making liverwurst in our Stop and Shop, but we depend on Boar's Head, and we all thought Boar's Head, right, top tier company. And for the USDA to go in there with the long litany of violations, and for Boar's Head not to comply and follow up, and 10 people passed away because they didn't follow up. So again, worst case scenario, we're gonna have to depend on a third-party vendor for some of these items that we cannot produce in our store. That gives us reason for concern. So this is just a reminder. If there is no alternative, then the next avenue is to go to the third party. And if we can, we would like to keep it in-house, but unfortunately, our hands are tied if it goes through. Jay, go ahead.
Do you have a location in Falmouth?
Yes.
Do you have stores? Okay. This is fairly new, right? It was just last month, end of April, I believe, that got passed. I spoke to Falmouth today. And I don't want to give Falmouth's regulation too much heightened. It's a guidepost. It's somewhat of a format, template that Yarmouth is going to, this committee will build off of. But this is going to be unique. We have a lot of business folks, yourself included, who have taken time to really craft something that works for Yarmouth and the residents in Yarmouth's environment. Well, I know it's been fairly recent. It's only been probably a month and a half. What have you done? What have you had to do to adjust? There's a lot of variance. There's a lot of flexibility to adhere to Falmouth's regulation that has been passed. What has that meant internally for you folks to have to comply? Is it applying for putting variances together, adjusting, looking at alternatives? What has been internally the back room at Stop and Shop?
Thank you. So a lot of the legwork has been done behind the scenes by Wayne Stewart. Hopefully he'll be able to attend one of these meetings. So Wayne Stewart is the supply guru, if you will. So he's in charge of finding the sources that are the alternatives that are available. I wish he were here to speak to that. But as far as what we are doing in the stores right now, we're just following compliance from Wayne Stewart and his directions. So for example, Nantucket, they've had to make some adjustments. For all the plastics that were not authorized to use, they were shipped off island to the stores that could use them, and there were some viable alternatives that they're using right now. So to answer your question, right now the town of right now the store in Falmouth is following the directions with Wayne, and they're making progress.
I don't think this goes into effect right away. I think there's a grace period. I would imagine that Yarmouth will as well.
Right. Yeah, we're getting ahead of the game. We're proactively.
Exactly right. You have to look at your supply and what you're buying.
Absolutely. And so, for example, if we go to option 1 as the alternative, is that alternative viable in terms of, is our supplier going to be able to get their hands on enough product? Right. If they don't, then who else is, we deal with basically what, Bunzl is our primary supplier. So that's one issue, that's one complication amongst others.
Were you able to participate in Falmouth? The exercise that Yarmouth is going through right now, were you able to do that in Falmouth? Say, they've been about a year and a half or 2 years in this process.
Right. They're running and gunning, so they're off and running. So
no. I just didn't know if you were able to. Yarmouth is trying to. The selectmen said last time we want an open and fair. We want the business community, everyone involved, and residents, environmentalists, everyone participate.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious if Falmouth went through that exercise as well. They did. Okay.
So yeah. So I just wanted to stress, Stop and Shop. We're all on the same page. We're about the people and the planet. We want sustainability. we're all on the same page there. There's no question about it. But as it stands right now, the way the law reads right now, the wide swath of the law will definitely adversely affect us, the big boys on the block. I don't know how you guys are going to be able to react in a way to stick around. So we will do whatever it takes to make it work. And I think that's what we're here for today, with the task force. Come up with an action plan that is enforceable by the Board of Health.
Just a question, I got a mic there. You mentioned if you couldn't use a certain product, you would have to outsource to a third-party vendor. Is it fair to say the third-party vendor could bring the product back to you in plastic, no different than the plastic that you used?
Without a doubt.
So there could be no net differential other than you've lost control of the product for health reasons?
Zero gain.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say zero gain. It would be, because it's going to increase the cost, and where's the cost going to be passed on? I mean,
Consumer, I get it.
yeah, I'm a QA guy. I don't like talking dollars and cents, but that's the bottom line. It's going to be passed on.
And the other point is, if we have to find a different supplier that can supply us, where are they coming from? Because if this alternative is somewhat made in China, then they have to ship it to us, which in turn hurts the environment. And there's also regulations in the United States about how plastic is made. And in other countries, those regulations are not there.
Not to mention the labor laws. So we know,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, it's the world we live in. You know, who's producing those tennis shoes over wherever? I don't know, but it's out there. It's real.
The other thing too would be, if we're producing it in the store, you're getting the freshest product possible. If it is being produced elsewhere, that's time from the manufacturer, transit, to the shelf. The consumer is not getting the best of quality products. So that hurts what you're actually physically looking for. So the time is a factor with a lot of the perishable items.
So who makes the plastics that you use?
I really good answer.
We have, yeah, I mean,
We
what?
get it from our supplier, and the supplier, our person who buys from the supplier,
How do you know
has
it's
all
not
that
China?
information. Because I know it's not, because I spoke to him on the phone. It's all domesticated, it's all in the US because of the regulations that are in place.
Would you say that there's one type of plastic that you use the most? Like, is PET probably like your most frequently used plastic? Or is it, or number 5?
That's a good question.
I would probably say the number 2, or no, I'm sorry, the number 1, the PETs. Only because fresh cut fruit, deli platters, a lot of the stuff that we're packaging up. Would you agree? Probably.
Number 1 is.
Yeah, number 1.
Yeah. So when we're talking about, changing this bylaw, obviously, we're not gonna keep it banning all types of plastic anymore. So knowing that you use number 1 the most, that's good to know. We definitely would wanna take that one out maybe. The one that concerns me is number 3, polyvinyl chloride. That's pretty bad plastic, really damaging to produce it, and it's also just full of toxic chemicals. So you said there's not a lot of alternatives available.
Limited, yeah.
Limited. Can you elaborate a little further on that? Like, just to me, I don't know. I don't work in Stop and Shop, but I would think like a different low density polyethylene or some other type of saran wrap type plastic could work. Why is it only PVC that works for that product?
Put you on the spot.
I don't.
Question.
Yeah, good question. Absolutely good question. I have
Question.
no idea. It may be just a stronger plastic there so that you're not sticking your finger
Okay.
Yes,
But again, I'm guessing, I'm not.
yeah, I
So, I
can't
could-
answer
I
that
could-
with any knowledge whatsoever why they picked the plastic that they picked.
Okay.
And more likely than not, from the QA perspective, it's probably about food safety. The mills, the thickness of this probably has something to do with it. Again, Wayne Stewart would be more apt to answer your question in further detail, but.
Yeah.
That's not just overwrapped product there, that would be pallet wrap there, that would be the strength of the plastic keeping the pallets together through the
But
store.
we're just
etc.
talking about plastic that's going to the consumer.
Okay.
Yep.
The consumer
Understood.
side,
Yep,
yeah.
understood.
Because number 3 would be one that I would, that we should look at as a group of still banning that type of plastic. So, and I know that in the bylaw, how it's written now, it does not affect raw food or raw meat or seafood. So maybe that raw meat wouldn't really be affected, that use of number 3, but.
Right.
So
And quite frankly, where would be, outside of meat and seafood, what are we using this for? I don't.
meat, we wrap meat.
Yeah, but outside of meat and seafood, there's not much, I really don't
That's
think
pretty much it.
this is a widely used product in our stores, outside of meat and seafood.
I have a question, and that was very helpful, thank you very much. That was great to understand what you do, and maybe could kind of come internally a little bit, and if you don't mind, Aiden or Mike, if I could ask you a question. We heard the types that they use and the ones that they use predominantly, they have alternative options and things like that. Is to bring this down to I want to say a smaller scale, can either one of you help us understand which of these types of products you use predominantly and the impact of alternatives, et cetera, and if you couldn't use those, like they couldn't sell certain things, how would that affect you?
So we were actually talking about this before the meeting started and going through the list of different things that we have and the costs associated with some of them. So like, for example, straws, it's like a 200% increase on compostable versus what we currently use. Now I know that's technically drinkware, so I don't know if that qualifies within the way that the law is written right now. No, but that's just one example. There's another one of the silverware kits that they showed, which would be plastic number 6. They are having alternatives come out. I'm actually trying to see if I can get my hands on some to see what the price would be. And right now I'm coming up empty. That they are kind of hard to find and source, which would be challenging. We use a lot of the silverware kits because people are getting takeout, they're bringing it to the hotel. It's not like they're bringing it home to have their lobster roll with a fork and knife, right? Same with plastic spoons for chowder. Another kind of niche item that we use is to-go containers for soup because they're lined. I don't know what lining would qualify it as the plastic, but they hope to make it so they're safer for somebody to take home. So I'll have to get more specifics on what that plastic would be. It's cardboard and then it has like a plastic liner on the inside to help it kind of stay together, right? If you were to put the hot soup in like a cardboard container, we'd have quite a mess.
Is it recyclable, do you know?
I don't know, but I can get some of that information together and I can bring examples of different things that we use for takeout containers and things like that. There are some that have alternatives, but it's price, availability, and kind of how safe it is to use. So, for example, like cardboard or soup.
Primarily what's available as far as from your broadline suppliers and stuff like that, a lot of it in the restaurant field uses number 1 as far as the takeout containers. Over the past couple of years, they've made a pretty good headway as far as offering alternatives to PET as far as, what they're considering biodegradable, compostable takeout containers. As far as a full substitute of what is actually, compostable and biodegradable, there are different levels of what compostability is. There's commercially compostable, then also household compostable. As far as what's compostable, as far as taking it home and burying it in your backyard and it's gonna break down, very few, very, very limited. Most of the stuff that is out there on the market is deemed commercially compostable, which in this area, in this region, there is I can't think of any necessarily off the top of my head that actually does commercial compostability. Jill or Haley may know more about that than I would, but as far as, to that effect, the to-go boxes and stuff, we've transitioned out of, your styrofoam, because we put a ban on styrofoam like a year and a half ago at this point, so we're pretty much out of styrofoam in to-go setting in restaurants. And then as far as the boxes, like I said, we're trying to find, commercially compostable, biodegradable, as far as what the information being offered, and we're trying to change as far as we can. What Aiden was referring to as far as the silverware, there's a company that came out with, they've been one of the better straw biodegradables that have proven track record of straws that actually degrade over a set time in water. They came out with a silverware line, which it's in the very beginning stages of, but we'll see when it actually comes out, what that actually means as far as cost to the consumer. To give just a perspective, a case of like the straws, which you'll get about 3,500 straws in a case from them, is about $80 versus a straw case that is PET based is $13. So you're talking $13 for the same amount of straws roughly that you're going to buy for $80. And I understand that you're listening to $80 versus $13, it's not that big of a jump. But if you're talking percentage across the board of items going up, upwards of 300% of cost, like Stop and Shop said, sustainability and everything else, the bottom line is we still have to incur a 300-400% increase of cost. And that more or less, we can absorb some of that as restaurants, and we're willing to. But at the end of the day, it's still consumerism, and consumers are gonna have to take the brunt of that. Unfortunately, that's just how the market dictates. But I think based on, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, Jamie, there are products out there right now that we can get, and a lot of us have started to transition out of that in preparation for this. But there aren't complete alternatives for everything that we're doing as far as, if I give you a paper cup with our cream cheese right now, our cream cheese, we confidently say will last 4 weeks. We give it to you in a container, as long as it's under refrigeration pretty consistently, you take it out, you use it, put it back just like you would with anything else, 4 weeks. If I take that same cup and I bring it home to you in that paper cup, within 3 to 4 days, you're starting to get the paper lining breaking away into the cream cheese. So you're talking about a 10% shelf life versus the other. So, yeah.
Are you talking about a paper cup lined in plastic?
No,
Eden's talking about?
even eliminating any form of plastic in a paper cup. A strictly compostable, biodegradable cup. Within 3 to 4 days in a refrigerated setting, even the moisture content from just cream cheese alone, which is a low density moisture content versus soups, you're talking 3 to 4 days you start to break down. So.
I wanted to comment, Bill mentioned last meeting that his committee would be happy to get involved with consumer education. And I think that we need to put some of the responsibility on consumers in terms of what they're asking for. I thought it was interesting, the video that Bill sent out via email of Falmouth's initiative. One of the restaurant owners did a survey and had his staff ask, do you want utensils? And I think it was 70 or 93% said no. And so it made it easier for them to to decide what to do about that. But I think that it shouldn't all be on the restaurant owners or even the retail stores to bear the brunt of this change. I think there needs to be consumer education and that people realistically know what's available as well as what they need to do in terms of changing their habits to make this all successful.
I think the good news is that coming down the line, there will be sustainable products that are available, right? And the costs, like when this first came out, and we were first having the discussion, the cost of certain things were even higher than what they are now. So if this is well thought out and well implemented, it will go really well. Because there is other towns and organizations that are facing the same challenges that we are, and there's a lot of good mind power behind it that wants to try to solve the problem that we're discussing.
I just want to pick up on that point about education to the public, and maybe as we're trying to learn, and this was helpful, the 7 plastics, so it comes from the store. I'm going to ask another question. What in Yarmouth is the process to recycle plastics? That is, are there some that are banned? I don't go to the.
They take everything but black.
You take everything but black. All right. And that's on the consumer to make sure that they don't put it in a plastic bag and they can't see it? Is that how that works? Or when you recycle it, you physically have to bring it there and elect to recycle? It's not required in Yarmouth, is that right?
No, you physically bring it there, you don't empty it.
No, I understand that.
Empty it out of any container you have collected. You don't put it in a paper bag or.
So there's just one type that's not acceptable for recycling.
If something is smaller than the palm of your hand, it cannot be recycled. Such as a bottle or some other type of small container. Anybody else have any other questions about the types or recycling or anything like that? Okay.
I guess I have a question. Sure. So to recycle in the town, you have to go to the disposable station?
The transfer.
The transfer station?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
okay. I didn't know if there were any like recycle containers or bins that were like for public use.
Only if an individual, I think, retail has them.
Okay.
And it's strictly voluntary, correct? That is,
Yeah.
you're not, I mean, because I know there were some communities that used to require you to recycle, and they would give you a plastic tote to put your recyclables in and those types of things. And then Brewster's tried to effectuate that, enhancing it with that pay-as-you-throw disaster. I live there, so I can say that. You take your plastic stuff and put it in a plastic bag and then throw it away. It doesn't make any sense.
There is a state law about what is required. I mean, if you go into the transfer station, you'll see it when you go in. I mean, you
Okay.
are by law required to recycle.
See, that's interesting, because I wouldn't have known that.
And how is that enforced? It's not.
It's hard to, yeah.
I mean, we watch people throw market trash. You know, people really not very careful, so I'm sure.
And we used to, it used to get money back from the recycling materials, and now almost 100% of it costs money to get rid of it. So.
I have a question. Maybe crazy idea and doesn't really go exactly with what this bylaw is talking about, but if we are going to allow restaurants, to use certain plastics like 1 and 2, those are really highly recyclable. So maybe if we implemented like mandatory recycling at restaurants, again, this is more to reduce plastics that are going to the customer, but just an idea of something. I know a lot of restaurants don't recycle, period, so maybe that could be good.
I would have to honestly find out from any of the major trash vendors on cable, like Cabosa and Asa Disposal. As far as I know, it's mainly just trash or cardboard recycling. I don't know if there's a completely separate program that they carry or bins that they have even that just for plastics. So I don't even know if that's it makes sense, but I don't even know if that's a realistic viable option from them necessarily. But, you know, it's something that we can find out and figure out if that's even, you know, an entertainment, like, a useful thing.
Yeah, I mean, this bylaw is mostly about what people are taking home.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really, go in line with this. Just,
Composting though.
yeah.
Composting it.
That's definitely something we would have to think about too, because we don't have any commercial or industrial composters on Cape Cod currently, and compostable plastics, when they are recycled, mess with recycling facilities. Jill, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, or the composting. Sorry, I feel like I cut you off.
No, I just wanted to, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just suggesting that if we were gonna have anything in a restaurant, that maybe a composting, container. I mean, it could collect food waste, and it could collect any of the compostable products, like a cup or the straws and that kind of thing.
Even at the beaches, the town. It's education.
But
I mean-
then we're looking at people putting in trash and compostables and recyclables all in the same container.
If I'm not mistaken, when we had initially adopted this bylaw as a town, a lot of the comments were the fact that you found these containers, all these containers along beachfronts, the public spaces, all that. At this current state, even if we switch over to compostables and stuff like that, even if they sit out on your beaches in the same exact spots as a non-compostable box, there's no guarantee or any certainty that that's actually gonna change and break down and decompose, and it's just gonna sit there just as long as the box that was there before. So I just want to kind of clarify that we are willing to make this change and get away from plastics as, what we can. But just understand that the idea that we're trying to clean up our beaches or clean up the public areas and spaces by eliminating plastics, that's not necessarily going to happen overnight and or with this change. That's consumerism behavior that people just are not throwing this stuff away into trash bins, they're just leaving it wherever, it's overflowing, it's getting into public places. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify that point.
I'm not sure we have enough time to legislate littering.
Yeah.
It's a problem in and of itself.
I have a question for
Sure.
the local restaurants and the stop shop. How is the bamboo products? I know they've come across, when I was in the wholesale food business, bamboo was coming along. Has it come any farther in the last 5 years or so?
It depends on, so they're actually, we use a lot of these containers that are made out of bamboo and sugarcane, and we use a lot of them. We use them for fish and chips, fried clams. They actually hold the product very good product to use for what we're offering. They basically make a blend of bamboo and sugarcane, and it creates a box. I think it goes back to what we were just talking about. A lot of, I think, those containers still end up in the trash. So, while they are a good product to use and a good alternative, I think, I know it's not in our charge, but it's something worth talking about is ways that we can help promote recycling as well. Right? So this is a small example. So a few years ago, my wife really wanted us to start recycling at home. So she bought me containers for different items to keep, right? So at first I was like having a hard time recycling. But then she taught me, okay, put it here, X, Y, and Z. And I recycle all the time now, right? So implementing good systems in place, it makes it a lot easier for the general public to educate them and to make it easy, right? If something is easy, more people are willing to do it than if it's going to be challenging or where do I recycle or where do I put it? So I don't know if it's necessarily our task to be charged with, but it's a good avenue to have the discussion with as well.
As far as the bamboo things, there are definitely more products available for what Hayden and I are doing. As far as the mainstream alternatives and what has come out, sugarcane, arrowroot, bamboo, cornstarch based, there's a lot of products that have filtered down into kind of more major availability. But to speak to like what Stop and Shop does, none of that has been implemented as far as anything retail like based. Everything has been designed with to-go products in mind, not a consumer retail position from their standpoint. So with all their products and what they've shown us today, you know, you're hearing Hayden and I sit up here and say like, oh, well, we use X, Y, and Z to substitute out for this, and we're finding alternatives. Their alternatives are dramatically less available than what we're able to accommodate and change to. So there is that challenge between what they're gonna have to face versus what restaurants like us are gonna have to go through. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right, any other questions or comments on the definition section of that? Plastics. So our next item was the discussion of the Falmouth draft regulation, and as I said at the beginning, we were presented today with what the final product was. So obviously none of us have had a chance to read the final product, but I guess maybe a little overview of it from what I could see, because I think that helps guide what we're doing. If you look at it, it's a rules and regulations for food establishments. So that's number one, that's what they're addressing there in Falmouth, which is similar to what we're having to address here under the bylaw. Secondly, Falmouth adopted it as a Board of Health regulation, which is something that we have to consider as part of our charge if we are interested in proceeding in that fashion. So again, unlike what we have, this is now a health regulation in Falmouth versus the general bylaw. There's a definition section that's not unlike the definition section that's currently existing, but it's a little more, they've got a little bit more in terms of what they define. And again, I haven't read through all of them, and that's a different topic for a different day. But again, the structure of this tells you why are we doing it, what's the authority behind it, what are we defining, and then they have some different things about different standards. And where this gets fundamentally different than what we have is the next provisions 4 and 5, waivers and variances. That is unlike what we currently have now, where it's all or nothing. This envisions a process where someone could make the petition or go to the health board, in the case of the Falmouth regulation, and present why it is that they need to continue to use what they're using, for the various reasons that are in there. And we can certainly look at them and see if they're workable and amplify them, et cetera. But that is one of, I think, the most different and important aspects here, is it gives somebody an opportunity to present why it is that full compliance is not feasible. And I think that's important to keep in mind when we're going forward here, unlike what we've got. They then talk about, again, kind of an amplified definitions of 6 and 7, 8. Enforcement, that's important as well, because we've talked about the difficulty. I know Jay's expressed how difficult what we currently have would be to enforce from both the on-site and just the health department's ability to enforce what we've got here today. So we should take a careful look at that. And then just the penalties are what the penalties are under the state law that's there. So this is a good framework to start off of. I will say that I know we were presented with one from Nantucket, where you brought us the last time, I think it was, that we looked at that one. Having gone through that one, I can say, in my own personal view, it's very good what they have, but I don't think it fits what we're looking to do. It's different than the food establishment one that we're looking at here. But if anyone can find or can bring to us from a different community, a food establishment, plastics, rule or regulation that we can compare and contrast, I think that would be helpful as well. I like the template. I like the structure, but I think that with some guidance from some other places, potentially, we can make it fit for Yarmouth. But that's where I see the real benefit of moving on from what we have now, is the fact that you give a restaurant owner or a food establishment the opportunity to explain how and why they have to continue to do what they're doing. And it gives the board the opportunity to grant them that, which neither has right now. The Board of Health, if it wanted to, under the current bylaw, could not give an aggrieved applicant any form of relief. And that's tough, because you can get a form of relief from a variance from zoning, from planning, from conservation, from everything, but you can't from plastics, and that seems extreme. And that's something I think that we should fix, yes, Mary.
I think that's fair, and we always build that into our regulations. Some way to appeal. But I would rather see us make our regulations so that it doesn't make it necessary for everybody to come for a waiver.
And I think this one says in it, and I agree with you, because it also, it empowers the health agent or designee, and I don't know exactly what that all means, but not everyone needs a public hearing.
No, but I don't mean that. I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about, we're looking at right now, what is being used, what are feasible alternatives. I would like our regulation to be written realistically based on what there is now, talking about though transition, acknowledging that there are things on the horizon, people are still working on this. I guess with some flexibility that we know has to happen, in other words, so that we don't have to deal with people coming before the health department, Board of Health, asking for a waiver for things that we realized sitting here weren't going to be attainable anyway.
That's a good point.
That's what I'm saying.
No, and that's a good point. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that I discovered Puerto Rico recently, or about a year ago, passed a similar bylaw.
Yeah.
So I'm in the process of researching and bringing that information to the
That'd be great.
Yeah. So, Jamie, what I was gonna ask is, does it make sense for us to determine now if we want it to be a Board of Health regulation or a bylaw, so then that helps what we're going to draft? Does that process come first? Or does it matter?
Regardless, I think we should decide early on which path to go, but I don't know if we have to decide it first. It's more substantive and then implementation. As I look at it, I think it's important for us to get a grip on what's the substance. What are we looking to prohibit? What are we looking to allow? What are we looking to restrict? What is the process for doing all that? And I agree with you that as we work through this, if it looks like the best process is, the way to go is to go to the health department and not go to the select board or some other, create a committee, we don't want to do that, I don't think, then that may help us really early decide that that's the better path to go, in my opinion. I'm happy to listen to anyone else's thoughts on that right now.
I think that no matter how we go, the health department's going to be charged with enforcing it. And that's just the way it is, because we have the food inspectors, they're already going into the establishments. That's what happened with the ball ban, right? I mean, it's likely that that would be the way it is. We're part of inspection, or they're part of inspectional services.
Mr. Chairman, I think if it's not the Board of Health, who is it going to be? Right?
Right.
And it would seem to me that the Board of Health, I mean, I'm assuming that as we look at proposals or regulations or bylaws in other communities, I would like to think that there's going to be some uniformity to the way in which they've approached this. You know, you look at, in looking at the Falmouth proposal, or it's not a proposal anymore, they've adopted. These are the regulations effective September 1st. They are basically drawing on the authority that the Commonwealth of
A lot of people are not familiar with the authorities that boards of health have, but they are significant. And I think that because the Commonwealth has done that, because those authorities exist, it would behoove us to sort of somehow ignore that authority and not respect it and utilize it in something like this. If the Board of Health is going to play that role for oversight, then I think we have to be cognizant of how they can best exercise their role in terms of enforcement. And so that's why I think you have to, I would be surprised if the Nantucket bylaw does not follow the same structure as what Falmouth has done. But I think, to me, this is going to be a question that will continually come up. So I think as we look at other models and other approaches, they have to be more than two. I think what we should be looking for is what is the commonality in their structure? Is it common for them to, maybe there's a bylaw that sort of creates a statement and uniformity and sort of provides direction to the Board of Health, and then gives authority for the regulatory side. The other point that you made, Mary, which is I think something to be cognizant of, is the burdens on the board and the burdens on the health agent if indeed one were to recommend this kind of structure, because I think those need to be kept in mind. It might require additional resources. Also, there may be a desire to phase. I think that's one of the things that we should be looking at in these bylaws. Are there ways to phase sections of it so that things come into, we're looking for compliance over time, a period, maybe a couple of years or whatever. I'm not wedded to any time frame, but I think that may be one way to address the problem. So those are some of my initial thoughts. I happen to like the idea of creating a regulatory framework involving the Board of Health, only because the Board of Health is empowered with significant authority under the statute. And in this bylaw, it makes reference to the statute. So I also think having a bylaw creates some nimbleness to this. There may be sections of the regulations. Let's assume that, in a few years, there's some there's some compostable, there's some alternatives that are being introduced that are becoming self-evident. So there may be sections of the bylaw that can be tightened or ratcheted up a little bit more based on market conditions. I think it would be a mistake to think of like anything that we recommend or propose should be in concrete. I think we're dealing with a subject matter where there are multiple authorities. I mean, we're dealing with the Commonwealth having a huge role in regulating the waste stream. I'm working on a project at the county where we're trying to see if we can create a food waste / composting facility on Cape Cod. And so I'm learning about all the challenges in dealing with DEP and food waste and how to manage that. There are clearly huge opportunities in doing it. They're quite evident, but the challenge is how do you get from here to there in doing it. So we're dealing with a situation here where there's sort of multiple authorities sort of having an impact on what's happening in the marketplace. And so those are my thoughts. I think there's something to be said for this, but I think it's incumbent on us to look at as many of the rules and regulations that are out there with other towns, other communities, even Puerto Rico, right? And because I'm sure we'll learn something from it. Because I do think the community wants us to do this kind of research and do this kind of homework. And so I think getting that kind of input, that kind of feedback would be very helpful. Thank you.
And finding out what has worked and what hasn't.
Yeah. Just to point that out, Mark's point is well taken in that. In looking at the Nantucket bylaw, the enforcement, it reads, shall be discretionary responsibility of the town manager or his designee. Police officers and health agents have the authority to enforce the bylaw. I'm sure the police were just thrilled to get that in Nantucket, okay? And then it goes on, the town manager, if determines he or she can determine if the cost of implementing and enforcing the bylaw has become unreasonable, they can suspend it permanently.
vote.
Okay, so all the power rests with the town manager in Nantucket, whereas to Mark's point, the Board of Health, you just can't pull the rug out from underneath this thing and it can be a little more fluid. So that was one of the other problems with Nantucket's was its enforcement, and they could just decide to stop it whenever the town manager felt like it was unreasonable to do so. So it sounds like a great
They
idea.
changed town managers, all right.
That's all it takes, all right? So, just to kind of move ahead for action steps then, to kind of move forward here, if we could maybe all take the opportunity before our next meeting to come back and give a careful reading of this, so we can start to kind of walk through what we like, what we dislike, what we want to change, and start to have that discussion, nuts and bolts now, of the terms that each of us think would be important to address. And could we all have different perspectives, so we're all gonna find something in there, which I think is great, that we are either really, really like, we didn't like, or we didn't think of. And no matter what happens at the end of this process, any rule or regulations always has something we didn't think of. But if everyone's okay with that, maybe a homework assignment, give it a careful reading, let's all come back and start to dive in now on what this looks like, and we'll use this as a template. And feel free, mark it up, change it up, do whatever you want, but let's come at it. This is a process here. Let's give it a thorough reading and a thorough vetting. Anyone else have a different suggestion or want electronic versions of these?
I can send that to you.
I wanted to hear more from Haley about the different 1 through 8s. I mean, you talked pretty authoritatively about the one that troubled you the most, but I'm kind of interested in your thoughts on the others too.
Yeah, well, I would say, so someone told me this saying that was on the Falmouth committee, and it was like 1, 2, 5, staying alive, 3, 6, 7, going to heaven, which I thought was funny. But it's just because 3, like we talked about, that has polyvinyl chloride, it's pretty toxic. 6 is polystyrene. Styrene is also a known carcinogen. And then 7 is kind of like a catch-all for all types of mixed plastics. So they're known to contain BPA or bisphenols A, which are linked to different forms of cancer. So those are like the 3 most toxic plastics. 5, that is one of the safest plastics according to the EPA. That's what they most recommend for food products to be packaged in. So 1, 2, and 5 are probably what we want to keep, but yeah, I would just say it's 3, 6, and 7 are the bad ones. And 7, it's also hard because it does contain bioplastics, which I personally feel very mixed about bioplastics, because when they're not composted industrially, they end up in the landfill. They're releasing methane and toxins. They act just like plastics. But if we were to get composting facilities, they would be a great option. But then at the same time, like, you know, there's still a single-use product. There still is a lot of chemicals added to them. And we have to, you know, use all this land to grow all this corn, using all this water to produce a product that we use one time and then we throw it out. So, yeah. But, yeah, I feel like that's a good, like, quick little summary. The other issue with plastics is that there's over, like, 3,000 different chemicals that could be added to plastics. So it's hard to know exactly what toxic chemicals are in what plastic products. A lot of companies don't have to disclose what chemicals are in their product because it's trade secrets. So, you know, you kind of run into a lot of roadblocks when you're trying to research, like, what toxic chemical is in this plastic. Like PET, that's a good, in my opinion, it's a really widely used plastic. It's able to be recycled. However, antimony, a heavy metal, is used in the catalyst of production of that plastic, which is linked to heart disease and cardiovascular problems. So, like, Yeah, there's many different things. I think that's a little summary.
I just wanted to, one thing I don't think we've ever talked about is the fact that styrofoam has already been banned. That was something that we did when we were on the recycling, when I was on the recycling committee, so that's already not available, or shouldn't be.
Okay. Anyone else have any other suggestions for us before, by way of action, to take between the next mail vote, Haley and I?
I think it would be great if our business owners wouldn't mind doing like a miniature little plastic audit, just of what plastic products you use, so that we could, look at them and how they would be affected in the ban, and maybe help you look for alternatives. Also, I'd love to know your notes on the Falmouth bylaw, but I guess we will get to that next week. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, next meeting. Next week.
I want to commend Haley for her comments and the education that she provides us in terms of the toxicity in what's around us. I just, periodically I will take Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, and just reread it and to sort of just refresh my memory and understanding of the passion that she took in writing this book, to remind us of the stuff that we surround ourselves with that's really impactful. And so when I hear you speaking, I feel you channeling that message and that sense of concern, and that sometimes we become so used to what we're dealing with here that we lose sight of the potential hazards that are around us. I respect clearly the desire from retailers and industry for food safety and making sure that the products don't get contaminated. The challenge is how you balance that with some of the other concerns. My question for the group to think about is whether or not the preamble, I think the preamble in the Falmouth bylaw is very interesting because it states a purpose. It outlines a message. And I think to some degree, if this board and the community believe that we should be a little bit more affirmative in terms of the specific types of plastics we're most worried about, maybe there's language that ought to be in the preamble that conveys a message to those that are being regulated of the kinds of plastics we really want to encourage people to seek alternatives for, right? And to be specific about the potential harmful effects. So I would argue what I like about the bylaw is it's very clear that we want to get out of single-use plastics. However, we recognize that there are challenges in doing that, and that's the direction that we're headed in. But I think the preamble could be an opportunity to make some very specific comments about the plastics we're most concerned about, the health effects that we're most concerned about, and maybe the kinds of plastics that are sort of high up on the naughty list that we'd love to see alternatives for. And I just think that's something worth discussing and exploring. I'm not pitching it, but I think it's something we're thinking about. Thank you.
It's a good idea.
Can I ask just one question?
Of course.
Does it have to be a specific plastic, or it can be a type of plastic? So, like straws, I'm saying, does it have to be all PET number one?
No, I don't.
Or could it be just straws? Or could it be just single-use, so, I'm saying, does it have to be a whole type of plastic? Or could it be limited?
I guess we can kind of figure that out as we go along here, of how sweeping do we want to be.
Or black. That's not
Exactly, I
recyclable.
think I like the idea. So right now, it's an idea, and how we decide to put that together, I guess will be part of what we're gonna do.
And my next question is, she actually said 1, 3, 5, 7. Can you say that? one more
Yeah,
time?
absolutely. It was, 1, 2, 5, staying alive, 3, 6, 7, going to heaven. It's kind of silly, but it is a good way to remember it. But like I said, number one's good, there's still toxic chemicals in that one, so it's kind of like a very, very general statement.
I want to see,
There's a question that I have for the Board of Health. You know, in government, we're always good at finding sticks, but sometimes candy, sticks and carrots. I'm just curious if our Board of Health, if we've ever sort of cited or awarded, or, you know, there's a standard where you can get either credits or be recognized as having achieved a certain status.
Well, we did that with the restaurant inspections, the grades
Okay,
that we give when the
So-
restaurant is inspected.
so
And that's posted and it's also.
So maybe, Mr. Chairman, that one of the things that we consider in this, to sort of facilitate and encourage compliance, is, you know, a recognition for those establishments that are taking, that have taken significant strides in meeting certain you know, I mean, I don't want to get into specifics, but I think to some degree, there may be some value in a business being cited as getting an A in sustainability or compostability or plastics reduction or whatever, because there's a market out there for people that pay attention to this, and there may be some value in doing that. And if we're doing that already, then that may be another feature to think about. And that's something that becomes a bragging point for a business in a restaurant or a food service operation.
Another good idea.
I'm on a roll.
Okay, schedule of next meeting, so Mary and I,
Jamie,
I'm sorry,
I
sir.
have a question that just occurred to me. I don't need the mic. If we have a deliverable to the select board in early September, which I think was what was committed from last night's meeting, it's a select board meeting, are we going to have sufficient time and meeting time to do that between now and then? Would we consider maybe having, you know, I know you're going to get to this in a second, but a meeting in July to address the task you just mentioned? Maybe we're going to need a second, third meeting in August. I know it's it's the middle of the summer to, you know, to finalize our proposal, because before we know it, we're going to be facing this deadline, right?
Funny you should ask, because Mary and I talked about the possibility of meeting in 2 weeks on the 18th, and moving the time to 2:30.
2:30 at town hall.
So we could do it at town hall and use the facilities there for amplification and all the TV world that we have to deal with there. And then try, we work around the 4th, but try to get, to begin with, accelerate that every couple of weeks in the earlier part of the process than the latter part of the process, because we've got a lot to do. And as we all know, it's like cramming for an exam. It's better for us to be working harder at the beginning than it is to try to just, because then you're just pressed up against time and you don't get it done. So if everyone's okay with kind of an accelerated schedule, we'd like to have the next meeting on the 18th.
Would it be possible to do the 17th? Just because
So-
the 18th is the day before a holiday.
I understand that, but the only time town hall had the hearing room available is on that day of the week, and I've been able to schedule it every other week.
We're gonna hold on the time right
Yeah.
now.
I know, I said the same thing to Jamie, knowing that it was right before the holiday.
And we'll try to keep it to 90 minutes. So I understand we all have schedules and it's impactful and we're volunteering time here. So if we can try to say that 6:18, 2:30 PM to 4, and we'll be at town hall.
And is it helpful if I send out a calendar invite to
Yes.
everyone? All right, so I'll do that tomorrow.
And does that work for everybody right now?
I don't know.
The hearing.
It might, if it doesn't, it doesn't. And I understand, the excused absences are part of the process here. We're gonna be fine. We could put a link, if we're at town hall, I think we could give an option for a virtual participation too.
Would that be helpful to you? Would that help?
At least it gives you the option.
Right now, it's just about childcare.
So-
Because Wednesday's the only days I take off, and with school ending the 16th, that's my only, I have to, on Wednesday, like, I would have to go.
We'll
So
try to get a Zoom link for
That's the only
those who, just for whatever reason, it may be easier to just do it remotely. How's that?
Fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Jay?
Mark, you correct me where I'm wrong. If we move that deadline to October 1st, this is going to be a multifaceted campaign. This isn't going to be, we're not going to solve things in just one document. Mark brought up a good point, a reward program. There's going to be an educational, we're going to get our information officer and IT involved, and there's going to be education within the community. I think it makes imminent sense that this is a bylaw, this is analogous to tobacco control. We have changed and amended the tobacco control regulation multiple times for flavored tobacco. Mary, you'll understand the Board of Health has done this. Outlawing, whether it's vending machines, over there, it's a living document. This is going to be a living document that we have. And my hope would be, I think this committee would be able to have something, multiple components of a campaign that could go in front of the town meeting, the legislative body at the town meeting. It would be a draft, but it would be other different components of a more comprehensive campaign to try to reduce plastics. I don't know that we're going to have something hard and fast. We might hard and fast, but there's been several good points that have come up here. And if nothing else, we know and determine that this belongs with the Board of Health as a regulation. So at the town meeting, that would be rescinded with this draft of a 3-4 phase, multiple components of what this committee is working on. Is that a reasonable expectation by October 1st we could have that?
Well, we heard September last night, so, no.
At the last meeting when we were here, I don't know if it's in the minutes, but I think we should shoot for October 1st, just one more month. But knowing that one document is not going to get us there. That's not a silver bullet. This is going to be multifaceted. There's going to be educational campaign. I had never done a YouTube to get the plastic water bottles. We had our information officer or communications person, we'll call it. And we had to put things together. I can imagine they'll be part of that. DPW may get involved up at the recycling center. There's going to have to be, maybe we do something with the schools. We're going to lay things out so the community understands, not to neglect in any way, look aside what the town voted for, and we want to put something that's even bigger than a citizen's petition. We want to put together a campaign.
I think that's fine, but I think we come up with the regulation because that's what the town citizens want. And then this is part of the phasing that we do. You
Yep.
say,
Exactly.
involved.
But there is
This
more.
is what we're recommending. This is what we'd like to see happen.
I agree, and to remember, what we have currently goes into effect January 1st of 2026. So we have to have something to replace that with. I don't think the citizens are gonna necessarily say, and you're right, there's gonna need to be a campaign, but it's gonna start with a different regulation in order to not implement the other one, and how that all works. The first charge is giving them something tangible as a regulation. I think everyone can then work with the fact that it is a campaign, and we're gonna have to change mindsets, and we're gonna have to change practices. I get all that. But I don't think we're gonna get anywhere if we don't have something tangible to present.
We definitely have to have something. Jamie, this doesn't go into effect for a bit. They gave an implementation date. I found it.
And I understand that, and we can decide how we wanna work on that one, but we do have a hard deadline of what's out there right now that we have to work around.
So to be implemented on January of 20?
Well, right now, what is in effect goes into effect and becomes implemented on 1/1 of 26. So,
Falmouth didn't have one.
so there was nothing that they were trying to avoid or outrun or replace or change or anything. They were just starting whole cloth. So they had a long runway where they could bring this all together. We don't have that. It doesn't mean it's impossible, and it doesn't mean everything you're saying can't be done. We just have a first step that we have to get over that hurdle first.
So let's get it done.
We will. I like it. All right, I'll take a motion to, unless anyone has anything else. All right,
Adjourn.
done. Thank you very much, everyone.